your guide to the truth. TheNewAmericanMedia.com.
Broadcasting to you live from the Milky Way Galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles to be specific. Hello everybody and welcome to a very special episode of Agree to Disagree. This is going to be part 2 of a very interesting show. We already welcomed cybersecurity expert Aaron Bedra to the program. He is just not seeing the evidence yet to claim that this is a North Korean hack on Sony. Interesting that President Obama blames the Innocence of Muslims video for the Benghazi attacks and then actually says something along the lines of, and I'll get the exact quote for you, but people misusing or abusing the First Amendment. And then he comes out and says that Sony made a mistake and they should not have pulled the movie from the theaters. Very interesting. You blame movies when it's convenient to protect Muslims. And then you blame Sony for backing down from North Korea if it was North Korea. And that's what Aaron Bedra was just talking about on the other side of the program. You can check all these shows out. They're going to be archived at thenewamericanmedia.com. On the right-hand side is also our Twitter and Facebook feed. You can search us on Facebook by searching The New American Media with spaces in between, like the page, or just click it there from the homepage. Underneath that is our Twitter feed. We're at American_media_. And subscribe, youtube.com/The New American Media. But Aaron Bedra was saying that, you know, it's tough. Attribution takes a lot of time to figure out where it came from. And you know, the facts just aren't adding up right now. It may very well prove to be that this was North Korea, but his spidey senses, his gut instinct was saying that the fingerprints left behind regarding country of origin and, you know, he studied foreign attackers and software security, and he was just saying that it's not there yet. And the broken English and the way that these messages were put out by the GOP, the Guardians of Peace that did this hack, it seems very forced. And hopefully we intend to get Aaron Bedra back on for a little bit more time to really hash this out when we get some more information. Now, I want to switch gears for just a second here because yesterday we talked with an amazing sports journalist by the name of John Tellich, who's been covering Cleveland sports for 35 years. That show's archived at all those places I just told you about, the homepage of thenewamericanmedia.com, etc. It's all up there. Had a really good talk on our sports show, The Unhappy Hour. And now we'd like to bring back another guest who's been with us a few times before. His name is Ben Swann. He is one of the most respected up-and-coming journalists in the liberty movement. He's been a guest on our program before. Now he's over at Russia Today, and we're excited to bring him back into the show. He just released a project about the roots of police militarization. You can find that's embedded as our featured video at thenewamericanmedia.com. So let's go ahead and get Ben into the show.
There you are. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Ben, this is Brian. You're live on Agree to Disagree. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Good to talk to you again, Brian.
Absolutely, man. Last time we saw each other was, what was that, the United We Stand Festival in Los Angeles, right?
That's correct. Not the first time we had talked, but the first time we had met.
Exactly. Yeah, we've done the show together quite a few times, and it's a pleasure to have you back, Ben. I had a chance to check out your Roots of Police Militarization video, and I think it's important enough that we went ahead and embedded it over as our featured video at thenewamericanmedia.com. And you know, there's so much going on in the world right now. Obviously, I got to get to the Sony situation with what's ramping up with North Korea, but I got to talk to you about the roots of police militarization. But before I even get to that, tell me, though, something has changed. You're now on Russia Today. I know we were at that United We Stand Fest with Abby Martin, and now I click over and I see you on RT, rocking it over there, seeing you covering live down in Ferguson. Tell us about what you've been through over the past, over the better part of 2014. You've kind of made a transition and developed a partnership over there, huh?
We absolutely have. So I'm basically freelancing for them right now, and it's a great relationship because I'm able to continue to do all the work I have been doing and remain entirely independent in that respect. But at the same time, RT has some terrific resources, and being able to use them. So, for instance, being able to go out to Ferguson, as you mentioned, and we actually took 2 different trips out there and covered what was going on. And it's a great partnership so far. I love the work that they're doing, and I love the freedom of still being able to do what I do.
Yeah, and that's kind of, in my life, I run a business and I do consulting, and I have a client and I do a gig in one hand, and then I run the New American Media on another hand, and I have other projects going on. And I really like that ability where you're not completely tied down 60, 70 hours a week. You become somebody's property. I mean, do you kind of see the workforce in general moving in that direction? Because I'm feeling that too. That's the way things are headed.
I think the idea of people being their own contractors, for a lot of folks is an appealing idea where you go out and work and set your own hours. And obviously I can't completely set my own hours, but I have a lot of freedom and a lot of flexibility there. And the nice thing about it is, the thing I like the best about it is I can walk away from it at any time.
Right.
Which is a great feeling, especially in journalism. Because as you know my story, coming out of a traditional broadcast background, there are a lot of restraints. And so I prefer to not be in a position where I'm tied down and have the freedom to work with other entities as well, other news entities, and develop brand partnerships, and we're actually working on that right now, and I'm pretty excited about that. Yeah,
and who was that? I think that was Governor Jesse Ventura, who got hired by MSNBC, and then they canned him, or they shut down the project, but then he was on like a gag order, kind of like Tom Likas does on the radio, where you're still under contract, they're not going to let you work, but they're going to honor their contract and pay you to not talk. It's really weird when you become somebody's property working for a huge corporation, I would imagine, right?
Well, it absolutely is. I think it's a fairly unique idea, too, when you look at some of these, especially in media, some of the contracts that you're given. They really want to control every aspect of everything you say and do. So, avoiding that at all possible costs. And that's, again, why one thing I really like about RT is they have been very open, and essentially it's like I come in and I do some work for them, and I do work on my own. And I think it's a great partnership in terms of, as I mentioned, the kind of the toys they have to play with, because they got a lot of stuff over there. And there are people who raise questions about it and say, well, is there a concern about the fact that this place is funded by the Kremlin? Absolutely, there's concern about that. State-owned media it has to be, I think, something that you take a close look at. But one of the hosts of a RT show called In the Now, Anissa Nowries, was talking to me about this, and one of the things she pointed out is that the reality is that all these companies have big restrictions on what they can do, whether it comes from advertisers or it comes from the government here in the U.S., relationships with political parties. They all have restrictions. At least in this case, it's very transparent who the restrictions would be coming from. I will say this. In my time so far at RT America, I've not had a single story or a single subject that anyone has tried to shift or shape or control at all. So we've been doing this for, I think, a little over a month, maybe a month and a half, that I've been doing work with them. And, they've been extremely open. I come in, I put together my stories and my show. I have complete control over it, and that's been great.
Yeah, and when we had the chance to talk with Abby Martin at that same event that we were referencing earlier, that United We Stand festival earlier this year in Los Angeles, and you guys can find the video online, and I grilled Abby Martin, who's a really cool person. I really dig her. Got to bring her back into the show again sometime soon. But I really grilled her. I was just about the Russia connection, about, so what, this is an American company, you're an American, and you like our freedoms and liberties, but your mouthpiece is coming from Vladimir Putin. Explain to me, and I really put her to task, and she answered it, and she said roughly the same thing. She said, I would not still be here if I was being stifled, if I had a producer telling me what to say, what not to say, and I really find that stunning. I find it amazing that they're not messing with it. Of course, I guess if it ain't broken, why fix it?
Well, I think that's true, and I think Abby, by the way, I have enormous respect for Abby Martin, and one of the big reasons I was even interested in talking with RT was because of the fact that Abby's there and the show she does with Breaking the Set. Abby and I would say, probably don't agree on every subject, certainly in terms of politics, and that's okay. I still think she's a fantastic journalist, and I love what she does. I will say this, that, she's absolutely right, and I think a great example of that is when Abby Martin on air criticized the Russian government for going into Crimea and the Russian military, and she and I don't even agree on that. I actually think the referendum that happened in Crimea was the right of the people in Crimea to decide that. She saw it more as an act of aggression than even I did. But the fact that she went on there and she said it, and Brian, she was not taken off the air. She was not silenced. She was not ordered to make an apology. And I guarantee you, if any anchor at any place I've ever been or any network in this country were to do a similar thing, that crossed the so-called line in terms of what our government would think, there is no way they would just say, well, she's entitled to her opinion. It would not happen.
Yeah, you've seen people like Cenk Uygur, Glenn Beck, Dylan Ratigan. You've seen some people with Dylan Ratigan, one of the most epic rants you've seen in the past decade. That wasn't pre-scripted on that HBO show about the newsroom. Epic rants, and then very very shortly later, they're not there anymore. It's very interesting to consider. You've been doing your project now. Give us an update on your project with your own website. With, like you said, you're doing independent contracting and you're working, a couple different pots on the stove at the same time, because you don't censor yourself by any stretch. You're the only one that has final say on your program. Give us an update on what's going on over there on your website and with this latest Roots of Police Militarization project.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you're absolutely right. I am my own boss on that issue, and so everything we do, we strive to make it, as honest and thorough and exploring points that are outside the left-right paradigm as possible. I'm really excited about the Truth in Media project. It has been going so well, and we've grown a lot in this project and figuring out how to put together these videos. You'll notice that this latest one, the police one, if you are familiar with the ones we did in our first season, stylistically is done differently. The look of it's a little bit different, and I'm excited about that. That's actually something that I was looking forward to experimenting with, and I'm really feeling good about the direction we're moving in. But look, essentially what we're trying to do is talk about these very important issues and get down to the core of it, and not be drive-by media, and not give you the quick, left-right version of major stories. Militarization is a great example. It's a story that literally I've been talking about for well over a year, and yet, mainstream didn't even sort of cover it until Ferguson in August of this year, and then they started talking about it. And then, of course, as we make the point, I think they're getting a lot of those stories wrong in the way they're covering it. So there's a lot that needs to be done.
Yeah, the whole Ferguson story, that one reminded me a lot of the Trayvon Martin case, George Zimmerman. As a staunch believer and defender of the Second Amendment, I believe if I'm jumped and attacked by somebody on a street, I can defend myself. And for some reason, the president waded into that story, and the Al Sharptons and everybody drummed this up. And I tried not to put my opinions out there until I got to see evidence from a trial. I got to see some facts. I got to read some testimony. And I'm like, all right, yes, there wasn't a body camera there. There wasn't a surveillance camera, but it seems like this dude was looking at someone suspicious, walking through the backyards with a hoodie in the rain. He got jumped by him, who he might have thought he was trying to stalk him or something, but he got attacked first, and then he defended himself. The same thing with Ferguson was I didn't want to make a call on this. I wasn't there. I didn't really see why this was a racial issue instead of just a police violence and police militarization issue. But I guess, Ben, you and I are ahead of the curve on the police militarization issue, so maybe we saw it from different eyes. You went down to Ferguson. Can you tell me about your experience down there, what perspective you had when you went, and how that was either reaffirmed by your experience or how your ideas of the whole Ferguson case changed by your experiences down there?
Yeah, I will say this. I don't think that my feelings were reaffirmed. I think they were redefined, and I'll tell you why. Going into Ferguson, I expected it to be, I grew up in a pretty rough place, and I expected it to be a pretty rough place. And it's really not, actually. It's a pretty quaint little town. It's about 15 minutes from the airport in St. Louis. It's actually kind of an old historic town. It's very pretty. About 70% African American. The people were incredibly friendly, and they were incredibly nice, and just meeting a lot of people who were there. And after I started talking to people, and not just people living there, there were a lot of people when I was there who were living now in Detroit, and one guy from Denver, and they had grown up in Ferguson, and they had come back. They were in the area, and they wanted to see where this had all gone down. But what was really interesting about it, I got to tell you, was talking to people. It makes complete sense to me why this whole thing blew up. Because, I mean, quite candidly, Brian, I agree with you. The circumstances surrounding this particular story, they're difficult to wade into, number one. Number two, there are people who make the argument all the time that, well, listen, this guy was not innocent and he was not a victim. And that may be so. That may be so. But look, Mike Brown was not seen as this young innocent kid in that community per se. He wasn't like a favorite son of the community that was taken from him. I think what Mike Brown became is he became the catalyst that represented, whether he was right or wrong, he represented pent-up feelings that have been building for 30 years in that community. Now, I'm going to tell you something tonight on your show that I think is, again, way ahead of the curve and where the rest of the media has been on the story. And that the real root cause of everything that was happening in Ferguson, the root of it, is the oppression of people through a policing for profit system that is going on in every community in this country. It hits minority communities especially hard. But what we're finding is that in every community we have municipalities. It's not a police versus people issue. It's municipalities that instead of representing people are bleeding people by coming up with an entire series of ways to fine you and to give you fees and to create crimes for the sake of deriving revenue, and then use police to become the tax collectors to collect the money in that system. Ferguson is an incredible example of that. And let me, I don't mean to filibuster, but let me just tell you very quickly.
Hey, no. Ben, by the way, filibuster, there's no such thing on Agree to Disagree. We hit every tangent you could imagine, and I take notes, and I try to make sense of it and get back to it when I'm 9 steps ahead of where I started. So take it wherever you want, brother. Okay,
so one of the things that's really interesting about this is that in Ferguson and Florissant, so Florissant is the neighboring community. Ferguson and Florissant actually share a high school, okay? There are a total of 90 municipalities in St. Louis County, okay? Among those 90 municipalities, there are about 50 different municipal courts that are represented. In 2013, Ferguson and Florissant ranked number one out of those 50 municipal courts. The court for Ferguson and Florissant ranked number one in the amount of revenue being derived from the public. In 2013, those communities, through their municipal court, profited, not took in, they profited $3.2 million in fines and fees in a community that's 70% African American. It is mostly a low-income community. How did you get $3.2 million bled out of that community? And so here's what I think, as I was telling you, for those of us who are ahead of the curve here, this is where the real story is that the frustration for people there didn't just happen in 2015. I talked to guys who said 30 years ago that Ferguson had a reputation that if you were in this community and you saw a police officer, they would find a reason to ticket you. For any reason, pull you over. Oh, instead of having a screw in your license plate, you use a piece of wire. Oh, that's an infraction. Got to go to court. Here's your fine. And they're telling me that 30 years ago it was like this. And I believe that the real rebellion that came out of Mike Brown's case is that people in that community have felt for a very long time they have not been represented by the municipality. They have not been protected by police. They have merely had police there to derive revenue from them. And that's where the real resentment has been building up. And I'm not even sure all the people in that community would articulate it to you that way, but I think that's the root of what was really happening.
And that's the puzzle that you put together with the pieces that you were able to acquire. Back to something you said a second ago, that Mike Brown wasn't looked at as a favorite son or some local saint, because that was a lot of the backlash from what the mainstream media was the dinosaur media was doing to George Zimmerman. They were showing these pictures of this sweet 12-year-old Trayvon Martin, 12-year-old kid, not the 6 foot something, in all the pictures online and what you say. It's like, oh, this sweet little innocent angel. You're saying that Mike Brown wasn't seen as a particular angel? Was he viewed as kind of a guy that's always hanging around trouble? Was that the general?
No, I don't think it's necessarily that. I just think that when people look at the case and they look at what happened, there was obviously a significant number of people who felt like the guy put his hands up because of the stories. They said he put his hands up and he was still shot to death. But it wasn't because they said, now here's a guy who would never do anything wrong, or we refuse to believe the videotape of him in the convenience store. I don't think that was the case at all. I think it was merely people saying the feeling was that, yeah, he may have been wrong, and he may have even been committing a crime, but why did you shoot him to death?
Right.
And the problem is when you see the police as aggressors and only as aggressors, and that's why I'm saying this goes back to a lot of it goes back to a monetary issue, because when you see a police officer, and I think, by the way, this is not just a black-white issue. I think this is a generational issue in America. I think if you talk to any person who was not any, but many people who are under the age of 35 in this country, essentially millennials, and you say to those people, when you see a police officer, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? They're probably going to say that I'm going to get a ticket. If I'm driving and I see a police officer, I don't want one driving behind me.
I'd say, oh, crap. I'd say, oh, crap, and then I'd figure out how I can hit record on my camera and try to live feed so it's in the cloud and they can't delete it, or because I've seen so many blatant cases. And not because they're monsters and terrible people, but because you have and I have come to believe, and not because we're pessimistic, but we've come to believe through experience that the primary function of the police is to derive revenue from you. So if I see a traffic cop, I don't think the traffic cop is trying to protect people from crashing. I don't think the traffic cop is trying to protect people from the drug driver on the road. I think the traffic cop is looking for the first fool who makes a mistake in front of them so they can pull them over and ticket them. I doubt he's going to pull me over and hand me $100.
That's right. Or that he's going to pull me over and just make sure that everything's going well in my day, or that if he sees something that he considers to be dangerous to the public, he's going to pull me over. Because I don't think anything that I'm doing is dangerous to the public.
Right, exactly.
But I think that if he can find an infraction, he's going to pull me over. And it's not because the cop's a bad cop. Okay? It's because he's being trained and taught and is being given orders to say, this is what we do. These are our quotas. This is what we need to bring in, so you guys need to go out there and find it for us.
Yeah, you kind of hear less and less stories about, oh, I got pulled over, but he let me off with a warning. That used to, in my experience, that used to kind of be something you would hear a lot. I don't hear a lot of that these days. I don't know if it was the downturn.
I never get off with a warning, and I don't think and again, it goes back to this idea that we're cracking down. Right? You hear the term cracking down all the time. But what does that mean? It means that they are not giving officers the ability to let people off with a warning. It is a mandate. You don't let them off with a warning. If there's an infraction, a CIPO infraction, the click it or ticket thing, is all about saying, if they're caught, you will not warn them. You will ticket them.
And that's essentially what we had with the Eric Garner case. As we switch gears a little bit, that was a case where it's like, oh man, with Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin, or with Mike Brown and Darren Wilson, man, I wish there was a camera involved. Obviously, no police involved with Zimmerman and Trayvon, but with Mike Brown and Darren Wilson, I was like, oh, well, okay. Based on the evidence, it looks like the story played out. I would have liked to see a trial, probably, but was there even evidence of any wrongdoing here? If he attacked a cop and went for his gun and witnesses said that, I don't know if there was evidence. But with Eric Garner, we had it on tape. We had it on video. He was resisting arrest. He was breaking a law, but it was essentially tax collectors saying, you didn't pay your taxes on these Lucy cigarettes, chokeholded to death.
Well, but okay, so Eric Garner is a very different story for a couple of reasons, as you're pointing out. But remember this, too. I mean, I think in terms of the libertarian principle, the non-aggression principle, Eric Garner is a case study on the non-aggression principle. Because here's a guy who, number one, was selling loose leaf cigarettes. He's not pushing them on kids. He's not, going around the school and hiding out trying to get some kid to buy it from him. He's selling them in front of a store. He's selling them to customers who want to pay fewer taxes, and everyone who's coming to him is doing so of their own free will. As you pointed out, essentially the cops are acting as tax collectors here, saying, "Wait a minute, you can't do this." Number one. Number two, even when they come to him and approach him, he asks them to leave him alone. He raises his hands up. He never fights the officers. He never hits the officers. Their claim is this guy was a huge guy, and that's why they needed to take him down the way they did. He never aggressed for even a moment against these guys, and they killed him. And regardless of what anybody says about, well, technically it wasn't a chokehold. No, it was a chokehold. They have this ridiculous argument, Brian, about it. The bottom line is the guy died because he cut off his air supply. That's why he died. That's what the coroner ruled. And to that point, yes, there should have been a trial. And yes, I think in the Ferguson case, there should have been a trial, because I believe that if you were a police officer and you kill someone in the line of duty, and the person especially is not armed, regardless of whether they're running towards you or whatever, there should be a trial, because that's the point of the trial. If I kill someone and they're not armed, I guarantee you that a prosecutor is going to put me on trial for it. They're not going to say, well, there could be, a lot of other issues here. They're going to put me on trial and say, we'll let the courts decide. That's why we have a justice system. Well, I think the same thing should be true for police officers.
Well, that might be the case. However, if I were the victim of a home invasion and my life and my family's life was threatened, and I killed some scumbag that was trying to rape people and kill me and do stuff, and I killed them in self-defense, I don't know that I would want to say, yeah, sure, put me through a trial.
No, I agree with you, but at the same time, I mean, that is the only instance where you wouldn't. If someone came into your home, if they were aggressing into your home and you killed them, you might not go to trial. You might, depending on the state you're in, you might still go to trial. But remember, none of these guys are in their homes. These officers are not in their homes. And the bottom line is, the phrase that keeps being repeated in this case, in the Ferguson case, and also in the case of Tamir Rice in Cleveland, in both cases, police have said that the answer to this problem was compliance. If these guys had complied, that 12-year-old boy in Cleveland, Tamir Rice, was not given time to comply. He was holding a toy gun. John Crawford, who was in the Walmart in Ohio, who was shot to death, and by the way, who was carrying around a gun that he picked up off the shelf in the Walmart. The officer who shot him within 0.32 seconds of yelling, "Drop the gun." He shot him in less than 1 second. Not only that, but after he dropped the gun, fell on the ground, and had been shot, he told them it's a toy, and they continued to shoot him. So it's in those cases, when you do not have officers going to trial, that the public is saying it's because it's a rigged game. And I think it's very difficult to make the argument that it's not a rigged game.
Could you see yourself signing up to be a police officer? Where I don't know, because I see both sides of this, Ben. I absolutely do, and I'm hearing you say it as well. I want to make sure that I'm clear about that, because I think you and I both respect all those awesome police officers that risk their lives, and the firemen that run into burning buildings, and Lord knows that where you grew up and where I'm living in Los Angeles, you don't want the bad guys to run around unchecked. You need their help. However, we do see this stuff happening, and we talked about Tamir Rice being in Cleveland. Did you happen to see Andrew Hawkins, the wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns, that wore the shirt saying "Justice for John Crawford and Tamir Rice" about a week ago?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yep.
What did you think about that one? Because I'm a big Cleveland Browns fan. I know you worked in Fox Cincinnati, but you told me I think you were a Cowboy fan.
That's right.
Fair enough. It looks like we might not make the playoffs again. And Johnny Manziel flopped, Texas boy. Anyway, early in the career. But Andrew Hawkins really put it out there, and I loved what I saw from him. And I just want to get your thoughts on that, because we're seeing LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kobe Bryant, the "I Can't Breathe" shirt, the "Justice for John Crawford and Tamir Rice." Frankly, I'm happy. However, it's hard with the hands up, don't shoot, when most of the witnesses are saying that never happened. That was a narrative that it didn't happen.
Right.
That's where some athletes are getting lambasted.
I don't even think. I think this. I think that if Darren Wilson had, based on what he said, based on the transcripts that went in front of the grand jury, I think if you put him on trial, he's not going to jail. That guy's not going to prison, because you've got to find 12 people who will say beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was wrong. And I don't think you're going to find that. I think his case is fairly unique. I think in these other cases, I think in the Eric Garner case, I think the officers are probably going to prison. I think in the Tamir Rice case, if that one goes to a grand jury and ultimately goes to a trial, I think he's going to prison. I think in the John Crawford case, he's going to prison. Because, again, it's the aggression. Now, I want to mention something. You mentioned about police officers, and I agree with you. Listen, it's an incredibly difficult job to have, and I think that we should have enormous respect for people who are willing to take on that job. But I also think that in the public, we have a responsibility to hold people accountable, especially in leadership, because one of the things we talk about in our militarization piece is that the biggest problem through all of this is the training. That officers are being trained in a certain way that I think is negative for the public. I think it's negative for the officers. I think it's being embedded into them, and I think it's bad for the public in general. Officers are not being allowed to use discretion. They're being constantly told that the next time they're out on the street will be their last time out on the street. And I think that the training is bad. I think a lot of the training is being done by guys who are coming back from war zones. I know for a fact that in the Ferguson case, the guys who were out there on the street, the guys who handled the training for the St. Louis County Police, that's not the name of it. It's the St. Louis something to that effect. But essentially, it's for St. Louis County, the police department, that they are Iraq War veterans who are doing that training. Listen, I have enormous respect for men and women in the military, but the streets of the U.S. cannot be a war zone. They're not a war zone. If they were, then you put soldiers on them. But if it's not, then you need to put peace officers. And there's a big difference between someone who's trained for war and someone who has the title of a peace officer.
Yeah, and you're right. And you got to go down there and see it in person, like you said. You think the media was kind of getting the main story wrong here. You got to see did it feel like a soft rollout of the police state? Did it feel when you were down? Were you there when everything was flying around? Give us your timeline of what days you spent down there in Ferguson, because you said you were down there in two states.
I was not down there during the actual the mayhem, and I wanted to be, and unfortunately I wasn't able to be. To be down there those days. I was there, I came back, though, after a lot of this had happened and saw the buildings that had been burned down, talked to people who had their buildings, their private businesses burned down. We have a pretty interesting confrontation with a woman who is an activist there who essentially said that, burning businesses is a legitimate form of protest, and I challenged her on that. And one of the things I challenged her on was, then why didn't you burn down the police station? Why didn't you burn down the fire station? Because that's if it's a legitimate form of protest, that's your the object of your oppression, if you will. And yet those remain untouched, and yet the Walgreens burned and the boutique shop burned. So I think it's a pretty incredible thing to see what's happened there. And my biggest fear, Brian, is that through all of this, the protests and everything, that media, because they consistently get the story wrong, that nothing really changes. So for these young men, if you don't take away the militarized training of police, then, all these guys who have died in the past few weeks who have gotten attention, nothing changes because, you're still training cops poorly. And so those are the issues that I think. And again, the policing for profit issue, again, is a huge issue because you're not going to restore confidence in those who are essentially peace officers when we turn peace officers into tax collectors. And it's a disservice to these men and women who sign up to be peace officers when that's their primary function.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't really need mafia-style shakedowns for protection. Pay us our piece. Give us $100. We're gonna knock your teeth in or break your arm, or hey, we'll burn your building down tomorrow. Those are mafia tactics. Nobody wants that. But talking about police militarization here, I want to play a clip. It's I don't know, about 30 seconds long here. This is regarding, I believe this is a woman that took this video and put it up here regarding an MRAP. I'm not sure exactly where it picks up, so I'm just going to play this here because we're not just seeing this in Ferguson.
If somebody is directing fire toward a team that's trying to get in.
So the woman's asking, what's this for? And he said, well, this is, people can take cover if people are directing fire at a team that's trying to get in.
They safely can pull right up to a front. Take enemy fire and still try to address the threat.
And this officer is standing next to this huge MRAP, the mine resistant. What does MRAP stand for? Mine resistant artillery protected? Is that? I think
it's a mine resistant armored something.
Good. We're both on the same page.
I'll look it up while you're doing that.
Thank you. It's a huge freaking tank. It's a ginormous Humvee on steroids with weapons. But he's explaining why the local police force needs this.
Without being feared of getting shot.
So I'm thinking that is totally appropriate in Iraq, but what kind of a situation in the U.S. would you see that happening?
I mean, we've got a lot of constitutionalists and a lot of people that stockpile weapons.
So these MRAPs are coming over from Iraq and Afghanistan. They're surplus. Nobody else wanted to take them. They're now pushing them on all these local police forces. And the woman asked, well, I understand in warfare over in the Middle East, but why here? And the officer, I'm just going to replay it one more time if you want to hear from his mouth why these things are being brought to our streets.
What kind of a situation in the U.S. would you see that happening?
I mean, we've got a lot of constitutionalists and a lot of people that stockpile weapons.
There are a lot of constitutionalists and people who stockpile weapons, Ben.
Yep.
And there's a huge, well, hopefully a huge rally going on in Spokane, Washington tomorrow, where the organizers of this rally are saying, you know, this MRAP is going back to where it came from, or we're firing our sheriff. And how closely are you following this thing? Because, like I said, it's not just Ferguson; it's all over our country.
Right. Well, it is all over, and as we mentioned in the story, I mean, there's 94,000 machine guns, airplanes in some cases, armored vehicles that have been given to sheriff's departments and police departments across the country. What that officer said there, I actually take my hat off to him. I'm grateful for what he said, because he told the truth about why in a lot of these communities there is justification being built for having them. Up in New Hampshire, in Concord, New Hampshire, when the police department in Concord had requested one of these vehicles, in their report they had filled out, they had said constitutionalists and Free State Project, they call them Free Staters, and Occupy Wall Street people. That was the reason they said they needed, and by the way, it's MRAPS is mine-resistant, ambush-protected.
Man, you did bust me. I just pulled it up on Wiki. I'm looking here. Mine-resistant, ambush-protected. Kudos. Good work, Ben. Please continue.
So essentially, I mean, what this guy did was he told the truth. He said, this is why we have it. And that's the reality of it. People, he says, stockpile weapons. Yes, they're called gun owners. It's not called stockpiling. It's called owning. But I think that what he did was he said something that, again, he's hearing in meetings, discussions are being had about why they would need these vehicles and when they would be used. And he said something to this woman that he didn't realize he wasn't supposed to say, because it's been said over and over and over to him. But it was a candid moment, and it was a truthful moment. Now, the sheriffs come out and said, no. We have no problem about the law-abiding citizens. And listen, fire this guy if he does not get rid of it. Fire him. That's the power you have in the public, in a constitutional republic, and that's what we need to do, is start requiring that law enforcement be responsive to the people and not the other way around.
Exactly. We have to remember that these are our employees. We're the ones that pay them. We're the ones that want them here. If we don't want them here, they won't be here. It's up to us. It's so weird to always feel like that is Big Brother, to take Orwell's term. These people aren't pit bulls that corner us in the corner. These are people that work for us. And the more that we film them, have you followed that thing? I think that was, what was that, out of Illinois, where another piece of legislation came up saying that they can't film police. How important do you think it is to film?
If I may, what they're doing there is several courts have already ruled multiple times on this, that you have the right to record a police officer when they are in the act of an official duty. You have that right. Essentially saying there is no expectation of privacy when you are performing an official duty as a police officer. However, what they're doing in Illinois is they're trying to push through this law, and they've just got a lot of support behind it, and it's moved through the House there. Essentially, they're saying it is illegal to record any person when you do not have two-party consent. So you can't record anyone with your phone or their voice without consent. What they're simply saying is, if the police officer has not consented to be recorded, it's illegal to record him. That's what they're pushing through there.
Does that apply to their spy cameras on the streets?
Right, exactly. And I'm sure it does not. I think we can all agree it does not.
Oh, you can't ride on this freeway unless you put a tracking device in your car, a fast pass or something?
Right, because, remember, all these cameras that are set up in intersections, red light cameras, there's no consent in those. And the public has not consented to that at all. But they won't never do that themselves.
Well, you know, it really is interesting to see how this plays out, because it's not just 30 years of oppression in Ferguson. It's not just something in Spokane, Washington. And you're so right, Ben. I couldn't agree more. Thank God this guy said what he said. He basically just quoted out of the rule book, out of a meeting that he had. Okay, he wasn't supposed to say it in public, but guess what? Thank God he did, because that is the truth. Remember that Department of Homeland Security memo with Janet Napolitano, where she said it basically listed all these dangerous people. If you have a Ron Paul bumper sticker, if you're a returning veteran, if you believe in the Constitution, if you have an American flag, if you mention the Federal Reserve, if you have a gold coin or something, it's like, wow. So you're saying all the good awake people are now the danger to who? The bad guys? You know?
Well, anyone who's awake is a danger to those who are scheming. But listen, there's so much evidence. As you said, there's Department of Homeland Security memos. You have this guy talking about it. We've seen over and over and over again that this is the response that's coming down, starting on the federal level and working its way into the local level. And if you can see it and it's in front of you, then do not lie to yourself about what it is. Do not lie to yourself about where it is. Do not lie to yourself about the intent. And act now while you still have the ability to. And so that's why we, the public, again, I advocate for people to do something. Get rid of an unconstitutional sheriff. You have the power to do that. Get rid of, if you have a mayor who has an unconstitutional police chief, then fire your mayor and hire someone who will do it. Local elections are so poorly attended. I mean, the turnout is so bad. It's very easy to make changes.
Right. You know, the 3%ers. It only took a few percent to, cast off the shackles of the British in the 1700s. It doesn't take a majority. What is it? But rather a tireless minority keen to set brush fires in the minds of men. I think that was Samuel Adams. It doesn't take 51% to get things done. You just have to organize it and get your point across. And now, as we start wrapping this up here, Ben, one of the things you were saying, we can't lie to ourselves about it. We have to do something and act while there's an opportunity. One of the biggest stories that I've seen in a while, and I think it's so big because of so many intricacies and cross-weaving pieces of thread behind the scenes on this Sony hack is really interesting. It reminds me a little bit of when nobody saw 9/11 coming, nobody knew it was on the horizon, and then a couple hours after the attack on all the major networks, they had the Brady Bunch style grid of all their faces up on the screen, like, here's all the people that did it. Okay, well, why didn't you know that a second ago? Oh no, but we got it now. It's them. Nothing to see here, and we're going to write a report and call it a day. It just seems like this is a very quick jump to blame North Korea. I just had Aaron Bedra, our cybersecurity expert, on the program, and he was saying a couple of things, that attribution takes a lot of time to figure out exactly where cyber attacks came from, that the behavior and the country of origin, that the fingerprints are left behind, and it seemed like a forced ESL, English as a second language, in the messages from the GOP, the governors of the Guardians of Peace. Basically, he's just saying it's not adding up at all, and of course we don't have all the information perhaps, but some people are questioning, could this be a false flag to push now SOPA, PIPA, CISPA, ACTA, something that was not popular enough before, but hey, after a crisis, hey, let's pass the Patriot Act after 9/11. Oh, after Sony, we got to pass SOPA, PIPA, CISPA Part 2. What are your thoughts on this whole case? It's so complex, and it's breaking, and we're learning more about it by the day, but I would be a fool to not get your thoughts on this before we let you go here.
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say that I don't necessarily see it as a false flag. I do think there's a very strong possibility that there will be those who take advantage of that and certainly try to utilize it. So I see that as part of it. However, I will say this. I don't believe that necessarily the information indicates that North Korea did it either, for a couple of reasons. Number one, everyone seems to keep forgetting that the original request that came from the hackers, the Sony hack, they did not ask for this movie to be canceled. They never even mentioned the movie. In the first set of emails that came out, they asked for money. If Sony does not turn over money to us, we're going to release these secrets in these emails. That was the first thing. Then the media began talking about it. Who could it be? Who would have done this? And it was actually media reports that claimed that it might be North Korea and claimed that it had to do with the interview. It was not until a week after that happened, Brian, that the first mention of the movie The Interview was made by any of the Guardians of Peace hackers. And so if you look at the timeline of how it came out, now, a lot of people think that from the beginning they've been saying stuff about this movie. They haven't. it was actually the media who first linked it to the movie before these guys ever did it themselves. I encourage your listeners to go back and look at the original stories about this because it was not mentioned. And so I think there's a very strong possibility that there's just a group of hackers who did this, and media gave them a perfect out to basically put up a straw man over here, and they went along with it because you're all looking in the wrong direction right now.
You know, and it's interesting. President Obama came out today and he said he thought Sony made a bad move pulling the movie. I wish they would have contacted me first, which was really weird. But this is also the same president administration that blamed people misusing the First Amendment with the YouTube video, The Innocence of Muslims, on the Benghazi attacks, even though it had nothing to do with it. So he blames misusing and abusing our own First Amendment. It's almost like, well, we get what we get because, hey, you shouldn't do that with the First Amendment. And then with Sony now, he's saying that, well, you know, you shouldn't pull the movie, and we have a First Amendment right here. I mean, the hypocrisy is stunningly. Let's just say it's stunning. Any thoughts on how this administration has reacted to the Innocence of Muslims video and to the Sony hack?
Yeah, well, obviously, I mean, I think you make a good point that there's a lot of hypocrisy there. But remember that the Innocence of Muslims movie had nothing to do with Benghazi. We know that. It had nothing to do with any of these things that were going on. And by the way, that was also a media-contrived deal where the State Department put out this idea that, oh, it might have to do with this movie, and then all the media ran with it. Oh, it's the movie, it's the movie, it's the movie, instead of actually looking at what was taking place. And instead, in the case of Egypt, remember, in Egypt, the same time that Benghazi happened, there was the flag was ripped down at the Egyptian or the U.S. Embassy in Egypt, and there were crowds who were demonstrating there. But what were the crowds saying? They were demanding the release of an Egyptian terrorist who's being held by the United States. They weren't talking about the movie. If you just listened to what the people at the protest were saying, you would have known what the protest was about. So I think, again, you know, I don't mean to always go back to media, but, man, Brian, media has so much influence in this country. And it's crazy to me how they pick up a narrative and they run with it, and they shift the entire public's thinking. And the entire media business is so monkey see, monkey do that all you need is one network to start talking about North Korea, and now everyone's doing it. And again, we're all right there. And now the president says something that's very, you know, takes very little courage to say, you should have just talked to me. They should have released the movie. They should have run. Well, of course, they should have run the movie. But the fact is, I don't think it had to do with the movie at all in the first place. And I guarantee you this, if somebody keeps talking about how they're just trying to protect the public and they're concerned about this, remember that Sony didn't make the decision to pull the movie. They didn't. The movie theaters did.
And that's a great point.
Theaters in the country said they would not show it. And that's when Sony said, okay, we won't release.
And that's where the backlash should be, is on the movie theaters themselves saying, come on. Because then every movie then is going to be protested with threats, and then what? You just shut down the theaters. Bad guys win.
Yeah. Well, and again, you know, so, you know, the movie theaters, they don't care what movies are showing on Christmas Day. They don't. They care about whether or not you're going to come. So as business owners, they have the ability to say what's best for our business. So I think you could make the argument that Sony is a bunch of boneheads for having done this story in the first place. I mean, even done this to begin with, because, you know, look, if anyone had made a movie about killing George W. Bush or killing Barack Obama when they were in office, it would have been considered an act of terrorism. They would have been referred to as terrorists. Sony does it about Kim Jong-un, and everybody says it's funny. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have a right to do it. I believe people have the freedom to do whatever they want. But I still think it was a bad idea, and it was done in poor taste. Making a movie about, you know, killing any living human being as a comedy is, you know, it's in poor taste, and it degrades who that person is, even if the person's a terrible person. So, you know, I think that what we're seeing now is Sony will release the movie at some point because they know they can make a lot of money doing it. That's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, too, because there's that theater down in Texas wanted to show Team America World Police. That kind of did the same thing with Kim Jong-il, and that was 10 years ago, and they said, all right, fine, we can't show the interview, we're gonna do a special airing of this. And then Paramount said, nope, we're not going to allow you to. It's feeling like the First Amendment is getting very stifled. I get your point. Like, if this was a movie about the assassination of Barack Obama as a buddy flick, I'm sure people would have a problem with it. I understand, but it really is the slippery slope of censorship, though, because
and that's what I'm saying. I don't think it should be censored. I don't think there should be any lawmaker or any judge who stops you from doing it. I just personally wouldn't see it because I think it's in bad taste. But listen, I think you should have every freedom to do whatever you want to do. And the fact is, remember this too. North Korea originally was making threats in regards to this, saying that they were going to blow up the White House. That was one of the claims that they made. They would blow up the White House. They would use a nuclear bomb on the United States. They made a bunch of claims in the beginning before the hack ever happened, which were outlandish. Then all of a sudden the hack happens and everything becomes cryptic. Again, that's why I am very suspicious that this had nothing to do with it in the first place, and I think media got duped.
Well, and that was the question I want to get back to with the media. Is it that we're sloppy, that we're gullible, or that we don't put enough time or enough homework into our projects, or that we're just sock puppets for corrupt administrations and, just give us enough money, we'll say whatever you want us to, truth be damned?
I'd say all of the above.
Man,
I think you hit it pretty well there.
Yeah, and that's something that you've been trying to do, and I've had this conversation with a few people, stuff that you're doing, with Truth in Media, and now working over at RT, and what you were doing before with Reality Check and whatnot. The only credibility that we have in this industry is our track record. If we're consistently, accurately depicting things as best we know them with the information we have at the time, that's how people come back. That's how people stick around. That's how you build your fan base. And I think it can be lost very quickly when you turn into a shill. And I think a lot of the dinosaur media, they've done enough at this point where you can point your finger at 20 people right off the bat. I bet you for $10 you could give me 20 people that are absolutely intellectually dishonest that are on the dinosaur networks. I don't think that would be very hard at all. But that is something you've been doing, is really just trying to seek, like we do here, seek truth, challenge dogma, and have fun. I liked that project that you just put out, the Roots of Police Militarization, and I do want people to check it out. How many other episodes are coming out this season? When should we expect them on whatever timeline?
We have 2 more that we'll be producing. One of them actually will be released in January, and that one is dealing with the roots of ISIS and the origins of ISIS, where ISIS actually comes from. And to me, this is maybe the most important story we've done, simply because I need for people to understand and have a tool that they can reference to family and friends to say, before you get swept up in all the discussions about how to get rid of ISIS, you need to understand how they came to be in the first place. Because many times in American foreign policy, our solutions are actually the cause of a lot of these problems.
That would be the blowback, right?
That's the blowback. And in this case, you hear a lot of politicians talking about the fact that it's a lack of action that led to ISIS being formed in the first place. All opposite is true, which is that it is the direct action of the United States that has caused this group to come along. And we'll explain all of it in great detail.
Interesting. And do you have the third one figured out yet, or you just focusing on one at a time?
No, we do. The next one we'll be doing will be released in February. We'll be going out to New Jersey and confronting lawmakers there because there's a lawsuit, which we've mentioned in the past, but a federal judge essentially saying that you as a voter, you do not have a right to vote in elections unless you vote as a Republican or Democrat. So we're going to show you some of what's going on with that.
Oh, wow. I mean, I remember covering when the RNC changed their rules so that they could literally change Ron Paul's speech that he earned by earning a plurality of, 5 states at the time, literally trading Ron Paul's speech for an empty chair, the biggest slap in the face to people that actually voted and cared. This two-party system is such a joke. So I guess you're pretty excited for Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush then, right?
I am thrilled. I truly am. That is what I am hoping for every night.
That'll fix the country.
The best thing that can happen for third parties, the best thing that can happen for independent voters in this country is to get a Jeb Bush, Hillary Clinton matchup in 2016, because it will demonstrate to so many millions more people that this whole thing is a charade and the whole thing's a joke. And the only way to fix that is to break that two-party hold.
Yeah, see, you actually went there, and you're going for it. You want to see it, just like you're happy that, you know, the officer said what an MRAP is there for the constitutionalists. Thank God he said it. I'm obviously being facetious, and so are you. That, you know, that would be ridiculous. However, if it takes something that blatantly stupid to shake people up and get both the Democrats and Republicans to bail on their parties at the same time, I think that's what's been missing most of the time. You peel off the, you know, what's the guy's name? Nader. Thank you, Ralph Nader.
Ralph Nader. Yep.
Yeah, he peels away from the Democrats, or then you have someone on the right, the Ross Perot, that peels away from the Republicans. But you don't really get the other side. Yeah, I think if you had Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush, I think you would see Democrats and Republicans both defecting their former parties and trying anything. And if that's the case, who could you possibly see as a third party if Rand Paul gets shut out by Jeb Bush? Who would you see as a third party possibly?
Oh, I think certainly if Gary Johnson gets the nomination again for the Libertarian Party, you know, I would love to see Gary Johnson get into a debate. And that's what this is all about, right? It's not even about getting people just to leave the parties. It's about saying, because there's a federal lawsuit underway right now that's being put forward by Judge Jim Gray, by Governor Gary Johnson, and by Jill Stein, Dr. Jill Stein, and all of them suing, saying that their exclusion from presidential debates, when they have they're on the ballots in enough states to be able to qualify to win the Electoral College, their exclusion from debates and their exclusion from the polls that get you into the debates is unconstitutional. If you can get Gary Johnson into a debate, you will see a revolution take place right before your eyes. The revolution will be televised because you will have dramatically different ideas being put in front of the American people than this faux debate that we have to sit through every 4 years.
Man, I'll tell you what, we're 2 years out, but I think a lot of people are counting down the minutes till we can get rid of this president and get somebody else in there. But then, once again, you freeze up with fright and just horror, wondering if you could get a Jeb Bush or Hillary in there and just continue the oligarchy. But, you know, hey, we're going to have plenty of months and plenty of years to talk about that one in the future, Ben. So in the last 30 seconds or so, give people, again, a place, give them your website, the best ways to stay in touch with what you're up to.
Absolutely. Check out benswann.com, which, by the way, next year is going to transition to truthandmedia.com.
Oh, there you go.
We're going to make a little bit of a leap there in January, so looking forward to that. And then also you can find me on Facebook. Just search Ben Swann _.
Excellent. Well, hey, Ben, I'll let you get back to your weekend. I appreciate you joining the program. We'll try not to take so long in between interviews next time. And continue good luck over at RT. Say hello to Abby Martin for us, and we'll be talking with you again soon. Okay, pal? Everybody, there he goes. Ben Swann, one of our favorites on the program. Please check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. Subscribe, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. On Twitter at American_media_. On Facebook, do a search for The New American Media and like the page. I appreciate you. I love you, and I'm out.
Your guide to the truth. thenewamericanmedia.com.